Monsters Inc. Scream Team, or Scare Island as it was called in my region, is one of those games where you're like, I really wish I could play that one more time. If you know anything about my channel, then you might know that I go back and buy a lot of old games that I had as a kid. Because goddammit, I'm an adult now, and if I'm gonna bring shame to my family, it's gonna be through video games, and not drugs. But mostly, I've been doing it because I genuinely want to know if the games I played as a kid hold up. So, does Monsters Inc. hold up? That's an easy yes. And by easy, I mean the game is very easy, but other than that, it's basically just as fun as I remember. Monsters Inc., as I'm sure all of you know, is one of Pixar's most popular movies, released in late October of 2001, and followed only 2 days later by the release of this game. Fun fact! This game was both released and given to me on my birthday. My parents were really on the ball that year. Or, not at all, but I like the first one more. So before there was ever a full feature-length movie prequel, because we all wanted that, the most we ever got was this game, which is based around the training Mike and Sully go through to become full-time scarers. They even addressed this in the first 2 minutes. Oh, good. It's one of these games. You know when you were in elementary school and there was always that one kid who was really good at origami, but when you tried it, your paper swan always looked shittier, no matter how much you tried? That's what this game looks like. But that's more of a hardware limitation than any fault of the developers. This is what games looked like back then. Games of this era always looked like somebody accidentally stepped on them and then they had to uncrumple it before somebody caught them. This was still firmly in the era of crappy JPEG icons and when pop-in was to be expected. Other than that though, the game actually looks pretty decent. The colors are varied, as are the environments, and the upbeat cartoon platformer vibe fits the property very well. The music is varied and catchy too. So just like every other animated movie game at the time, Monsters Inc. got a 3D platformer, this time of the open world variety. You can play as either Mike or Sully, and although they can both do everything the other one can, they do feel slightly different. Mike feels better for platforming because of his small size, and Sully feels like he's much more effective at smashing enemies. It's honestly just more of a mental thing than an actual design choice though. You can jump, double jump, spin attack, ground pound, and that's really it. The controls get the job done, but it was definitely a shock to revisit a 3D game from an era where the analog stick only recognized one of 8 directions. It makes some jumps harder than they have any right to be. After a tutorial with all your new abilities in hand, you are granted access to the first world. You have 3 worlds in total with 4 levels each, and each world is followed by a racing segment. You have the urban world, the desert world, and the winter world, so once again, the game plays it very safe. Unlike say the desert and winter worlds in a Mario game however, Scream Team actually does all it can with each theme. You don't just have generic pyramids and cacti in the background of the desert levels. You have an oasis in one level, a sphinx in another, a nighttime tomb level, and then finally a pyramid level. For the winter world you have an iceberg, a ski hill, some hot springs, and a log cabin. Even with the urban world being the most generic, it still has a park, some rooftops, a market, and some docks. The goal of the game is to achieve a minimum of a bronze medal in each level, with gold and silver medals remaining for extra challenges. You get a bronze medal by finding and scaring the crap out of robots called nerves, designed to simulate and react like children. Silver medals are won by collecting the 10 tokens in each level, and gold medals are won by scaring every last nerve in a given level. And I know it's supposed to look like they're falling asleep after I scare them, but it really looks like I'm murdering them. Nerves are scared by collecting enough ooze canisters to raise your scare meter. Different colors of nerves require more ooze, going from blue to red. So most levels revolve around finding ooze canisters and going back to scare all the nerves you passed while exploring. You scare the nerves by pressing the buttons shown on screen, which is a little bit too easy. But on the other hand, there are lots of toys for you to avoid as well as environmental hazards, but, and this is a problem that apparently will never go away in this genre, it doesn't even matter. Extra lives are everywhere, and you don't even lose your progress in a stage when you die. I don't like live systems in games where there are consequences, so having them in a game that is clearly intended for kids just makes no sense and stresses out those same kids unnecessarily. Each level can be beaten in around 10 minutes, 15 max to fully complete it. Enemies can be avoided entirely, and finding nerves is a straightforward process since none of the levels are excessively large. Very simple puzzles break up the platforming, and the hardest thing you might encounter is trying to grab that last monster token. Actually, never mind, I lied! The hardest parts are clearly the races against Steve Buscemi. You have to beat him to the end of the track, and in some cases collect enough tokens before the race is over, or you lose anyway. These parts can actually be pretty tricky because you have to decide between using shortcuts or taking the longer path that has more tokens. The last race took me way longer than it should have, but for payback the game lets you beat him senseless, so it's all good. In fact, you could argue that the title Monsters Inc. is actually the name of a company that produces monsters, and as you are clearly the one who is ruthlessly beating an otherwise innocent individual, that it is in fact you the player who is becoming the monster. Oh my god! I went too deep! From a gameplay perspective, these sections are actually a great way to introduce some new mechanics that unlock after beating each world. The trampolines, the boost pads, and these atoms that are way too big. In order to get the silver and gold medals in a stage, you need to revisit the park, for example, to use a trampoline to reach the new treehouse area. Once again, all this stuff is super simple, and it won't take someone experienced with video games to blow through the game. I beat the game in one 2-hour session, and I could have fully completed it in one day if need be. The game is clearly designed for little children because the challenge isn't really in the execution. Except for these parts! And yet for some reason, despite never really being challenged, I fully enjoyed my time with the game. The best cartoons and video games intended for children are always the ones that can still be enjoyed by adults. Maybe not in the same way, but the key thing is that they don't immediately fall apart when the viewer can think critically about them. Winnie the Pooh's Rumbly Tumbly Adventure is a very easy game, and although I'd hardly be challenged by it now, the world is very well designed and it's presented beautifully. In Scream Team's case, the varied level design and dense nature of the environments keeps the game from feeling tedious. There's something so universally enjoyable about running and jumping around a desert that is just so fun no matter what age you are. So if you want to get a young kid into video games, maybe have them play this after Winnie the Pooh as a baby's first platformer kind of game. Hey, do you want to check out that Winnie the Pooh video I made, or maybe one of those SpongeBob videos? Well, if you do, you can click these links. Also, I have a Twitter in the description if you like that sort of thing. Like, I talk about the channel, but also my life a lot, so if you're into that. Yeah, so anyway, I'm really sorry about the lack of content lately. I've been super busy, mostly with school. Like, school's been kind of stressful, so that's the reason I haven't been making a whole lot of videos. I am going to be making an update video soon to talk about the projects I'm working on and just like my life in general. So if you're curious, then you can check that out. By the way, thank you for watching all my stuff. Like, I really do appreciate you guys leaving comments and watching and sharing my stuff. It really does help. Anyway, so thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.